Hello and welcome back to Indistinct Chatter. I'm Aliza, and today we're going to get into the very, very interesting topic of taxes. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. It's just taxes, but I think you'll walk away learning something new. I know I sure have. Before I get into the wild world of taxes, though, I wanted to talk about moi for a second. Yesterday was my birthday, and I just had such a great day. At Christmas, Cole's grandma had made lemon poke cake, and after one bite, I said to Cole, I want this for my birthday. And that's what he made me. He's the best. I also got the sweetest text from Shannon with a list of 34 things she loves about me. And, like, come on. How sweet is that? I almost teared up. Just like, oh, he's so cute. I also spent the day at Meow Wolf in Denver. Something about me, I love museums and interactive, immersive exhibits, and Meow Wolf did not disappoint. I still don't even properly know how to describe it. I mean, we spent probably, I don't know, like 3 or 4 hours there. It spans multiple floors, and every space and every room is so different, but somehow it all blends into each other. And it feels like nostalgic, but somehow futuristic. Like maybe if you were watching a cartoon on Nickelodeon or something, or Cartoon Network in the early 90s, maybe not early 90s. I was not watching TV yet. Let's say like mid to late 90s, and you're watching these cartoons, but these cartoons are supposed to take place in the future. Do you know what I mean? That's the vibe that I was getting. And even if you like go in a circle and find yourself in the same room multiple times, you're going to find new details every single time. Plus, you can get these Voyager cards or something like that. I didn't even know about them until we were already in it. The second we got there, the elevator guy was like, get in. So we just got in the elevator and went. But these Voyager cards, you can scan at all these different spots. Sometimes they're on a screen, sometimes they're hidden. And they'll pop up like these memories that you have to try to remember. And basically, it's this whole immersive, futuristic mystery storyline that you can follow. So I already want to go again, and I want to do that next time. It was just really cool. Plus, so many details. Like I said, and even if you go to the same room multiple times, you're going to find new details. And I mean, probably really gross, but I was touching everything because there's felt, there's silkiness, there's plastic. Like, I don't even know how to describe everything. Nothing was ooey gooey, thankfully. They would look ooey gooey, but they were not feeling ooey gooey. But it was just so cool. You can climb on so much. Never in a museum have I been encouraged to climb. And I like that. Plus, they have a lounge, and I got a free drink for my birthday, and the bartender was so nice, and the drink was so yummy. And then we also went to Colorado Campfire for lunch, and that was also really yummy. Plus, they have a huge John Denver quote on the wall, and it's just very like Colorado, I guess. Very touristy in a way, but not in a bad way. And the food was really delicious, and they're dog friendly. So we'll have to go again when the weather warms up a little bit, and we'll bring Holden. And my drink had a freaking perfectly roasted marshmallow on top of it. And it was just so good. It was a little strong, but it was so good. And it snowed a little bit, which for me usually means it's going to be a good birthday. It's already melted, but it was pretty while it lasted. And there was some frosty, glittery snow left over this morning, like the really pretty stuff. Ugh, I love it. We've only had snow like 3, maybe 4 times so far this winter, and only one time stuck for more than a day. Last week we were still in like the 50s and 60s, but today on my morning walk with Holden, it was 17. Ooh, chilly, chilly, but the sun was shining so bright. So halfway through the walk, I had to take my earmuffs off because I was getting hot. I kind of wonder, and I'm not the only one, I see this a lot on Reels and TikTok. I wonder what this will mean for our summers here. A lot of people are really scared that this is going to mean like fire season is going to be really bad. So I really hope not. I'm just trying to enjoy the not bitter winter that I experienced growing up in Wisconsin. And I'm sorry to my friends who are still there because I know it's cold and I know it is mean. Okay, now let's get into what you came here for. Okay, it is tax season, baby. Woo! I do want to give a little disclaimer first, though. Although I used to work for a loan company where I did prep and submit people's taxes, I'm not a CPA or a tax professional. I only do my own taxes, and I know tax laws change all the time. This episode is just about some tax history with sprinkles of general information, but I won't be giving any tax advice. Sorry. For that, you'll have to talk to a qualified professional. So with that, tax season. Dun, dun, dun. Tax season just means that for the next few months, we've already just accepted our fate. We're going to spend hours gathering all of our forms, maybe receipts, countless other random documents, all in order to help us answer a bunch of questions that we might not fully understand. And while we're doing all this, we're just crossing our fingers and hoping we don't accidentally commit tax fraud. Every year I ask myself, why do we do this? And not like in some deep philosophical way of why do they exist or whatever, just like, why this system? Why do we have to calculate it? Why, did I say that right? Why do we have to calculate it? Why isn't it automatic? It's automatic when they take taxes out of our paychecks. Why not at the end of the year? Also, when did income taxes even become a thing? So, friends, that's where I began this journey, wondering, how did we get here? How do we get out? Whatever that song is from Daisy Jones and the Six. Well, we're not getting out, but why did we get here? How did we get here? Why is it so complicated? And what are we actually paying into every year, even when we think we're not? Because even if you're getting money back, you might notice it's not the full amount when you first start your taxes. The government still wants more. In my research, I discovered taxes are not new. They're actually ancient. Humans have been taxing each other basically forever. It wasn't always income, it was more taxing stuff. Back in ancient times, it was stuff like crops, livestock, labor, all that jazz. Basically, if you lived somewhere, you contributed something. In ancient Egypt, for example, people paid taxes in grain. Medieval Europe, well, your taxes might have been paid through labor, not cash money. Maybe you would have helped build roads, maintain land, or even served in armies. The concept of taxes was actually quite simple. If you benefit from living here, you help support it. Makes sense, right? Income taxes, though, are another beast. And income tax is a much newer concept. She's not from ye olden days. I don't know what that accent was. I'm so sorry. But wouldn't it be nice, though? Like, let's just put on our imagination caps for a second. Think about what life would be like if taxes were as simple as they used to be. Now wake up. Snap out of it. We've got income taxes to talk about. We've got forms to locate. So like I mentioned, income taxes, at least in the US, didn't exist the way we know them for most of our history. The first federal income tax didn't even show its face until the Civil War era. Specifically, the Revenue Act of 1861 imposed a tax of 3% on incomes above $800, which was a lot of money back then. I don't know how to calculate inflation, but I doot in the CPI thing, and it said it's about $29,500-ish today. So if you made $29,500, you'd be taxed at 3%. But that didn't stick. In 1862, that version of taxing shifted the brackets, and it was explicitly temporary. I repeat, temporary. It was intended to only be a thing until the mid-1860s. And at this point, incomes between $600 and $10,000 were taxed at 3%, and anything higher than that was taxed at 5%. This is what established the Bureau of Internal Revenue, which would later become the IRS. And I'm so sorry, Garbage Man's collecting. He's throwing things around. It's loud. I don't know if you heard it. Anyways, it increased more and more, and eventually in 1872, the tax was repealed. But don't worry, because in 1913, the 16th Amendment made federal income tax permanent. At first, income taxes really were about taxing the rich. Most Americans didn't even have to file. In fact, only about 2 to 5% of Americans did, and those were your wealthy 1 to 2 percenters. So if you made like $3,000 a year, you might have been taxed a whopping 1%. But if you were, say, a railroad tycoon or a banker or an oil exec, and you were making $500,000 a year, you were taxed up to around 6%. So if you were a teacher, a farmer, or maybe worked at a local shop, you were not required to file taxes. Wouldn't that be so nice? Think about that. The modern version we have today, where almost everyone pays, didn't really take off until World War II, when the government needed steady funding and expanded the system. In 1943, the current Tax Payment Act introduced withholding, which meant employers were required to take federal income tax out of workers' paychecks and send it directly to the government. That's why the money is already coming out before you even open your tax return every year. Still, income tax was not originally designed to be something everyone dealt with every year. So, why do we deal with it every single year? Well, as our country grew, wages became more standardized and the federal government took on more long-term responsibilities like paying for roads, bridges, scientific research, federal benefits, an army that's ready to go at all times. So, with all that, the tax base logistically had to expand. It's all about logistics. A system built for a few wealthy households couldn't fund a modern nation anymore. And just reminding you, this is before we had so many billionaires. I think things would be a little different now, but that's just me. I don't know anything about economy stuff. But that, my friends, brings us to not only why we do it every year, but why we have to do them ourselves. The IRS, aka the Internal Revenue Service if you're nasty, already receives a lot of our information. Employers send W-2s, banks send 1099 interest forms, investment platforms report gains. So, why don't they just stitch it all together and do it for us, right? Well, the US uses a self-reporting system where the government puts the responsibility on the individual to calculate, report, and confirm their own tax situation. Part of the reason is simple logistics. Like I said, logistics is everything. We all have different income sources, different deductions and credits, and different life situations. Back in the day, only the rich had salaries, dividends, and maybe a couple different incomes. Now, so many of us have multiple wages, second or third jobs, side jobs, investments, rental income, tuition credits, retirement contributions, the list goes on. There's not a one-size-fits-all calculation anymore, so instead of arguing with millions of people, the IRS just says, hey girl, you tell us, we'll verify. And actually, there was an attempt at having the IRS automatically file for us, or like a version of something like that. The IRS created a program called Direct File, where eligible taxpayers could prepare and submit their federal tax returns directly through an IRS-run online tool. So it didn't require private software. It was tested in multiple states and used by hundreds of thousands of taxpayers. However, even though the test worked reasonably well, it was discontinued for the 2026 filing season. Wah, wah. This was partly because overall usage was low compared to the huge number of total filers and because it cost more than other options to operate. So for now, that kind of IRS-run direct filing isn't broadly available. And, You might have heard about something called the Free File Program. Taking it back to the early 2000s, this is a multi year partnership between the IRS and a group of private tax software companies called the Free File Alliance. And this program was designed to offer free electronic tax prep and filing for qualifying taxpayers through trusted partners. In return, the IRS agreed not to build its own competing full featured filing system for the broad public. And actually, over the years, these companies have spent millions of dollars on lobbying in DC, and some critics and lawmakers have even argued that this made it harder for the IRS to implement a universal government run filing option. Interesting. Over time, some of the big tax prep companies like Intuit TurboTax and H&R Block left the Free File Alliance. And investigators found that free filing options were often hard to find or hidden behind really confusing interfaces. So many people who qualified ended up paying anyway. And that's not a conspiracy, that's on documented reporting. And in fact, I got from Intuit a while back, there was a class action lawsuit because of this. And when I did qualify as a free tax prep customer, whatever, I still had to pay. And then years later, they sent me like a check for whatever I paid. So just saying. And that brings me to what exactly are we even paying into? Every year, I'm like, we should get an itemized receipt of where our money went, right? When you start a new job, you always fill out withholding forms. Those aren't for you to decide if you want to pay taxes. It's just for how much you want your employer to take out throughout the year. You can see on your pay stubs where your money's going throughout the year, like federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, Medicare. So we kind of get an itemized receipt there, but come January through April, when you're actually filing your taxes, all that withholding for the year turns out to be just an estimate. Filing is reconciliation of what you paid versus what you actually owe, all based on your complete financial picture. It's your final bill where you owe or you get refunded based on all your individual factors like your deductions, credits, investments, side jobs, life changes, all that stuff I mentioned earlier. And that's why, even if you claim zero on those withholding forms, which maximizes what's taken out of your paycheck, you might still owe or get refunded come tax season. Just a little side note, I will say the past couple of years, I've gotten something in the mail from the IRS, like months after I've filed, with a letter saying, oops, we calculated wrong. Here's more of your money back. And like, thanks, but also get it together. If we make a mistake, that's tax fraud. All in all, tax season is sometimes the best, but also the worst. It's one of the few times that we are required to interact with a system that has real consequences like penalties, audits, fines, very scary stuff. And most of us were never taught how it works. Shout out to Miss Scoyen, though. She taught me how to approach taxes. Like, I don't think she legally could teach me how to do them. But after I got my first job in high school, she helped me understand the forms and how to ask the right questions. She also taught me how to write checks, about credit, all that fun stuff. I definitely did not take her advice on credit. I am someone who has to learn the hard way, but she tried. My dad also worked for H&R Block back in the day, so I had a lot of guidance from him as well. And that's great because numbers are like a second language to me and not a second language I am fluent in. My dad's the number guy, not me. But if you didn't have a teacher like Miss Scoyen or a parent who worked in finance or accounting or whatever, most of us aren't taught how this all works. We're just handed a bunch of forms, deadlines, and my favorite, acronyms. We're not even told good luck anymore. It's just do this or you might go to prison. It's kind of scary. Remember, historically, this wasn't meant to be for everyone every year. Income taxes were created for specific moments like wars, emergencies, expansions. Now they are permanent. The system we use now is basically just like a Frankenstein creation made out of decisions that have been made over decades, and they're all like layered and stitched together. It's weird. So it's totally normal to be stressed, confused, annoyed, maybe even feel a little defeated during tax season. I'm right there with you. Even with all the help I got growing up, it's a daunting task that seems to feel more complicated every year. And there's always at least one question where I have to go into Google and be like, what exactly does this mean? And you have to be so specific. You have to be like, okay, I worked in this county. I live, if you don't live and work in the same county, I lived in this county, but I work in this county. Or, I mean, for me, there's state taxes, city taxes, county taxes. There's different taxes for different parts of the city. It's crazy. So it gets confusing. But I hope with a little understanding as to why we do this, maybe it makes it a little less mysterious, a little less frustrating. Nah, I won't hold my breath for that. But I know for me, I'm 1% less frustrated after doing this deep dive. And I say deep very lightly. I did not get into the thick of it because, guys, this taxes are nuts. And there are a lot of conspiracies. If nothing, at least now you have some context, because that's something that we are often lacking, if I'm being honest. If you are like Cole and you got your taxes done the second your tax documents came from your employers, I'm so happy for you. If you're still in the process or haven't started yet, good luck, Godspeed, and may your refund be faster than expected. Don't count on it, but I'll hold on to hope for you and for me. Side note, before I go, did anyone watch the new Game of Thrones prequel, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? I have one spoiler, but I promise you can hear it. In fact, I think you should hear it if you haven't started it yet. You will see a man have explosive diarrhea come out of his asshole in the very first episode, so be prepared. That's all I have for you today. I'm going to go file my taxes. We'll chat next week. Love you. Love you. Bye.